Welcome back, everybody. We have Oscar Way with us from the California Association of Realtors, and he's going to share an amazing update on the residential real estate market. So, take it away, Oscar.
Thank you, Jim, for the introduction. Thank you very much for inviting me again to the meeting, or to present some information to everyone about the real estate industry. Now, I do have a presentation that will take us maybe about 15, 20 minutes, probably about 20 minutes. But let me put it up on the screen. Give me 1 second. Let me pull it up. Here we go. Now, it has been quite an interesting time for the last 12 months or so in the housing market industry and the real estate industry, to be specific. And we have had some ups and downs in the last 12, 13 months or so. Nobody realized at the beginning of the pandemic that the housing market will be actually pretty heated, pretty hot. And in the second half of the 2020, that's exactly what happened. So here in the next 15 minutes, I'm going to show you what happened in the last 12 months or so at the state level, also at the county level, but also give you some statistics at the city level as well, to kind of give you an idea of what we have been going through for the last 12 months. And then in the last 5 to 10 minutes, we're going to talk about what we can expect in the upcoming half of the year, with a lot of things in mind. Looking at the economy, looking at the interest rate and lending environment and things like that, and kind of figure it out, whether the housing market will continue to its momentum or not. So let's get started. Let's first take a look at a quick overview of what I'm going to talk about. As I mentioned, I'm going to spend the next 10 minutes or so to go over the market. Now, I can tell you that in the last 12 months, yes, sales have been actually very, very robust. We didn't expect that to happen, but because of interest rates, we have been seeing demand rising significantly since the second half of last year. But we have been hitting some roadblocks as well, because supply has been a constraint on some of the sales trend that we are seeing in different areas. And so supply actually hit rock bottom and probably towards the end of the year, and it continued to be very, very tight. Now, when you have an imbalance between supply and demand, what happened? Of course, you have been witnessing some increase in price. Home prices have skyrocketed in some areas, seeing about 20-30%. For the state median price, it shows an increase of 30% or 39% actually in May. Now, keep in mind that number is a median price, and I'll explain why that is important in a minute. But of course, when you have increase in home prices, what happened is it affects people's ability to buy. So that affects affordability. And so affordability have come down significantly at the state level, at the national level, as well as at some regional level. So what's going to happen going forward? Now, we have already had 6 months of housing market conditions with a pretty red hot market. What is going to happen after the state reopened? The state reopened on June 15th, and it has some impact on the market. It has some impact on the economy. We'll take a look at those two portion of the picture, and then we'll combine. And I'll wrap it up with in the last slides with some highlight bullet points to give you some concluding remark. So let's take a look first at a snapshot of the latest statistics I have on hand. Now, we are going to release the June's sales number tomorrow at the state level. So right now I only have data through May, but if you take a look at the slide, it gives you a pretty good sense of where the market has been. Now, this is a state number. If you look at the slide, you see some sales, you see some sales figure, you see some price number, you see some inventory data as well. Take a look at this number that I'm circling here with my mouse. 445,660. That's a number for sales of existing single-family homes. That's ramped up to show an annualized number, and it's seasonally adjusted. Now, the number that you want to look at, apologize for this, for skipping, the number that you want to look at is this number. This is a number that compares to last year's level, compared to May 2020 level. You can see that number is a very positive number with close to 90% increase compared to the previous year. Now, it's not a surprise because with the shutdown that took place in mid of March, carrying forward to April and May, we expected sales to go down, and indeed it did. And when compared to the market when it was shut down, obviously, a significant increase this year compared to last year is not a surprise. But if you look at the first 5 months of the market, first 5 months from January through May, it's actually show a pretty robust first 5 months in 2021. We have been increasing for the first 5 months by about 35% or so. That's pretty impressive. Now, there are reasons behind it, and I'll go over them very shortly. At the same time, not only sales improved significantly compared to 2020, even compared to the year before in 2018 and 2019, when you compare the 2021 number, it's actually still up by 15-20%. So it's real improvement in terms of demand. But if you don't have enough supply, like what we have been seeing, take a look at the unsold inventory index. This is the number of months of supply. It's only at 1.8 months right now. Typically, it should be about 4 to 5 months in a normal market. And because of this shortage of supply, home prices increased significantly. Like I said, it increased close to 40%. This number right here, 818,000, that's the statewide median price, the California state median price, and that's a record number that we have never seen before. And I know I'll be sharing the June's number tomorrow, but I can tell you that that trend continues in June. Whether that will continue in July and so on and so forth, let's wait for a couple minutes. I'll explain. I'll give you some idea. Now, let's take a look at the picture for San Diego. For San Diego County, it's a big county in California. It's followed a similar trend. Now, the numbers that we're showing here, these are raw data. These numbers, they're not seasonally adjusted, or they're not annualized. But you can see a trend here. If you look at the very end, that's where this portion is where we're at in the first half of the year. It's actually continued to show some improvement. Now, if you look at the year-to-date number, which is again the first 5 months, we're seeing a similar trend as what we're seeing at the state level, an increase of over 30% for the first 5 months. And on a year-over-year basis, just for the month of May, it increased close to 80%. So it's following a similar trend. But what I want to point out to you is, yes, we are going to see, we have been seeing some strong demand in San Diego. We have been seeing some demand, all over the state. But what I want to caution you about is the month-to-month percent change right here. Despite the fact that we are seeing some improvement, increase in sales compared to the year before, we are seeing some slowdown at the state level and also at the county level as well. The month-to-month percent change, this is from April to May, suggests that we are actually slowing down, from April to May. And I can tell you that from May to June probably will continue to slow down. Now, this number, of course, is not accounting these are raw numbers. So it is not seasonally adjusted. So it's safe to say the month-to-month percent change could reflect, the seasonal pattern. And it is actually showing some seasonal pattern. Usually in May or April, and there are some seasonalities during, course of the year, usually because, many people want to buy a home before their kids go back to school in August or September, right? So usually people will close escrow maybe in July or so, settle down, and then from that point on, sales actually start declining. And that's exactly what happened here. We are going to see some decline in sales towards the on a month-to-month basis, and on a year-over-year basis. If last year behaved like a normal year, then we should see a comparable pattern. But last year in 2020, it's a different year. There was not much seasonality last year, partly because last year a lot of kids, they did not have to go back to school in person. So when the potential home buyers, when a buyer purchased a property at the end of last year, in the second half of last year, they purchased without thinking too much about whether they will have to actually settle before the end of the year. And that's exactly what happened. If you look at this part of the sales, in 2020. There was not much. Take a look at this. The 2019, 2018, we always have a little bit of a decline, but in 2020, not much of a decline at the end of last year, at the end of 2020. So that suggests to me that in the news, when you read the news and the set for the second half of the year for home sales, you're going to see some year-over-year decline, because last year second half was very, very strong. Instead, in fact, for the second half of the year, for the whole year, it's actually had a sales that might be the strongest in the last 15, 20 years for the second half of the year. So it's not a surprise that this year, when you start reading July and August number, those numbers shows a year-over-year decline. Now, going back to the overall sales. So right now, we're still seeing overall sales at a very high level. But keep in mind, not all price segments are actually doing as good, as with each other. Take a look at the different price segments. Now, we have it broken out by different price segments from 0 to 300, 300 to 400, and so on and so forth. And you can see for San Diego, the higher price segments are actually doing better. We are seeing 80, 90% increase in sales gain so far in the first 5 months of the year. And this is not just a trend in San Diego. This is a trend that we have been observing in throughout the state and throughout the nation. And part of the reason is because of supply. Usually supply is tighter in the lower bottom of the lower price segments. But the other half of it is also because of the economy. The economic recessions that we experienced in the first part of the pandemic made a lot of people who work in the service sectors unemployed. That part of it actually hit the pandemic actually hit the service sector a lot harder compared to people who can work from home. And because of that reason, their income got affected. And many people who work in the service sectors, they tend to have income a little bit lower than those people who work in the who can work remotely. And as such, it affects their income. And also, they tend to buy homes that are a little bit more less pricey. And that also affects, the demand in the lower price segments. And that's why you're seeing the sales drop in the lower price segments. So it's a combination of demand shrinking, but also because of supply being tightened up in those areas. Now, I want to show you this because it affects the overall picture. On the right-hand side here, the mix of sales actually is changing up because of the robust gain in sales. If you look at the mix of sales, when you add all these up, it should add up to 100%. The blue bar, which represents 2020, and the dark blue represents 2021. If you look at the share of sales, you can clearly see that for the under 500, the share of sales dropped from 16% in 2020 to 6% in 2021. But what about the million plus? The million plus increased from 20% to 32%. Now there's a reason why we want to show you this. Before I actually talk about that, let's talk about another reason why home prices actually could have gone up. The other part of it is the supply side. The supply side, as I mentioned, at the state level, it's usually normal is usually about 4.5 to 5 months. But even for 2020, for San Diego, it was 3.5 months in May, and it dropped down to 1.6 months. So on the supply side, it's already contributing to the increase in the upward pressure on home prices, because when you have imbalance between supply and demand, it adds upward pressure on home prices. And the pressure is real. If you look at the number of active listings, number of home for sale properties being put up on the market, it has been consistently, actually going back to 2019, it has been consistently dropping by 30 to 40%. At the latest month, May, and it actually dropped close to 40%. So with active listings dropping significantly, you're seeing listings flying off the shelf because you don't have enough active listings or for sale properties on the market. So properties are flying off the shelf, and for the days on market, the number of properties that stay on market from being in active properties to actually off the shelf is only about 7 days, significantly below, what it was before, 11 days. 11 days is already a very low number, but it dropped off even more. And when you have, such market competitiveness, you have, days on market being very, very short, you have a tight supply situation, what happens? What happens is a lot of people, a lot of buyers who have the capability of doing so, financial capability of doing so, they try to outbid each other. And as such, you're seeing at the latest statistics, over 70%, over 7 out of 10 homes actually were sold above the asking price. That's significantly above what it was before, and 4 years ago when it was only 18, 19%. So there's a lot of competitiveness out there. And because of that competitiveness, that push up home prices, and because of what I mentioned earlier, the change in the mix of sales, that's why the median price, the county median price for San Diego actually increased quite significantly as well, just like what we're seeing at the estate level. It increased by close to 30%, but not all 30% is due to just price appreciation. Remember, this is a state median price, which means this number, the median price is the price right in the middle. So if we're selling more luxury homes or more higher price properties, that number get pulled up. So the number, as you saw earlier, the mix of sales actually changed towards more expensive homes. That means we are seeing more homes, the price are being pulled up a little bit higher. Now, the reason why I want to bring that up is because when the market actually normalized, that means, towards the end of the year when the economy is doing better, we normalize, that's when the price actually might actually dip a little bit. So just be aware that we may actually see some slowdown in price in the second half of the year. I'm going to skip this one. I'm going to show you this slide. We do a weekly survey. With the market being so hot, there's a lot of competition among buyers, and we are seeing some buyers fatigue, lately. We ask our realtors, whether they have seen someone taking a break because of buyer fatigue. 45% said they have observed some, and then another 55% said they actually saw more buyers experiencing buyer's fatigue than the week before. So a lot of concern about whether there is going to be some slowdown. Let me show you some local statistics very quickly. I have 5 cities. You can download these numbers from our website. It's actually give you a similar story. Price continue to go up significantly. Sales continue to go up by double digits, and active listings, which is right here, drop significantly. So Chula Vista, for example, increased by 33-34% with sales up close to 90%. Coronado, also double-digit increase in sales and price, but also active listing dropping close to 40%. Imperial Beach, 8.1% increase in price and 14.3% in sales. Listings also dropping significantly. Now, National City is the only one that shows a decline in sales, but we're looking at a very small number of observations. Maybe that's why we have a little bit of volatility there. And the city of San Diego, also double-digit increase in sales and price and significant decline in active listings. So let me quickly tell you exactly what I think, well, I shouldn't say exactly, based on my speculation, what is going to happen in the second half of the year when we have the economy, when the state continue to reopen, what is going to happen to the economy and the market. Now, the reason why we have the state reopen is because of the COVID-19 situations being under control. Now, we have been hearing about, Delta variant might have actually increased some of the cases. And in fact, it actually has. It used to be 5 months ago, we had about 50,000 cases on a daily basis, new cases on a daily basis. We were able to control it down to 600, and it bounced back up recently in the last few weeks to about 1,000, and it stay about 1,000 for a while. Now, we can do everything that we could. We can get people to get vaccinated. We can continue to do social distancing. And I think we're doing a pretty good job, especially in San Diego, with high number of people actually getting vaccinated. than the state as a whole. And by doing that, we actually increase more activity, economic activity. Take a look at this mobility report released by Google. It shows that the number of people doing things outside their house has improved. This actually is an increase. This actually is an index that compares to the pre-pandemic level. And the dark blue line here, at one point, it was actually down by 20%, which means the activity done outside the house was actually down from the pre-pandemic level by 20%. But now it improved to only down by 8%, still below the pre-pandemic level, but it's a little bit better. For the green line, those are the retail and restaurant activity. And that number also has improved from used to be down 40% in February, and now it's actually down only about 14. So with economic activity continuing to improve, we're seeing better retail sales at the national level. Look at the improvement in May, 28% increase compared to last year. It was even more impressive the last couple months in April and March. So things are actually looking better. And if you look at some of the statistics, some of these projections provided by UCLA shows that they expect the GDP numbers at the national level to actually surpass the pre-pandemic projection in the third quarter, starting in the third quarter, and they will actually be parallel to the projections starting from that point on. And it's primarily because of the service sectors. Service sectors, with restaurants opening, with theme parks opening, things are going to look a little bit better. And as such, we actually predict that we're going to see for the GDP increase by about 7% this year, and it's going to improve by about 4% or 3.7% in 2022, with unemployment down to below 6% this year and 5% in 2022. Now, the other indicator that you want to take a look at is this number, the inflation, consumer price index. Inflation is actually flaring up, and that affects the housing market. Before we take a look at how it affects the housing market, let's take a look at the economic outlook for San Diego. It's not going to be as strong as the national level for the GDP growth rate. And the reason why I believe that is going to be the case, I believe it's going to be more than 0.9%. I think that number needs to be revised upward a little bit. But it is because of San Diego and California in general relying on tourism a little bit more. And we still have restrictions on traveling, especially for international travel. So it's going to take a little bit more time for it to start picking back up. But unemployment is going to go below 6% in 2021 and below 5% or 4.5% in 2022. Now, I mentioned about inflation. Inflation is a number that a lot of real estate agents take a look at because it affects mortgage rates. The inflation, the CPI number, the consumer price index figure, actually shows with the latest reading, inflation flaring up to 5.4% compared to before. That's actually the highest in the last 13, 14 years. And now the Federal Reserve said, not to worry about it because it is mostly transitory, it is temporarily. I think it is more permanent than, a little bit more permanent than they believe. I believe that some of the inflationary pressure is transitory, and it's going to come down. But I do believe that some of them may actually stick, for a little bit longer. And because of that reason, mortgage rates actually could be a little bit more volatile going forward. Right now, it's not really affecting, the mortgage rates by a whole lot. People seem to believe that, inflation should be a little bit higher. Now, so it has been actually doing some fluctuation towards the end of the last few days or so. But I believe for the rest of the year, we are going to see the number actually start inching up a little bit, not a whole lot, but inch up, and it will affect sales. Pending sales, we're already seeing San Diego County actually continue to increase on a year-over-year basis, but not as much as before. And with that, for California, which San Diego should follow very closely, we expect sales actually to increase by about 10%, a little bit over 10% in 2021. And price, we need to make some adjustment for this price also. It's going to increase more than 8%. It's probably going to increase close to 20%. And we will be releasing some of those forecasts in the next couple of weeks or so. And with that said, here's what I believe is going to happen for the rest of the year. We believe the housing demand is going to continue with a pretty decent growth rate, but it is going to be a little bit softer compared to the first half of this year and also the second half of last year. Still going to be decent though, because we have low interest rates. But supply is going to be an issue. It's going to put some upward pressure on prices, and price growth will continue, but at a softer rate compared to the first half of the year. We're not going to see a 30-35% increase, but we might see a 15% increase in price. And the economy is bouncing back. And with the economy bouncing back, we can anticipate, increase in inflation, which will also affect mortgage rates, which is one of the reasons why, the sales actually will slow down in the second half of the year. With that said, I am passing on the mic back to Jim.
Hello, Oscar. Thank you so much. That was an amazing insight into where the housing market is and some good forecasting of where it might be going. So thank you for that and joining us. Next up, we have Gary London from London Moeder. Gary, you ready to take the reins here?
No, he said everything, so I have nothing to add. So, I think what I'll do is you put up a slideshow. I have one here. I think I'm going to avoid doing slides and take more of a philosophical approach to my presentation. Also, perhaps a little bit more local approach and maybe a little bit broader approach with respect to the other real estate food groups so that we get everything in. I will tell you that in listening to Oscar, the words that I've come up with and that has sort of preceded my thinking over the last couple of weeks, particularly as I traveled a little bit and went on vacation, is we're in the gouging stage of the economy right now, where I think that because of the numbers that Oscar put out, the economic recovery has been significant, particularly in those areas that have been pent up. For instance, I think travel is way up. I think tourism is way up. I think the numbers in San Diego express with respect to visitors. And I think that hotel room rates have gone sky high. I think restaurant costs have gone significantly higher. And I think that all defines sort of what I'm, again, going to call the gouging stage in the market right now. That may trail off when the summer gets done, but people are so pent up over COVID over the last year and a half that they've just got out. And of course, that has defined the market. We've had supply shortages in almost every sector, not just housing, but materials and all the things you build housing. And if you want to buy an RV, you want to buy a bicycle, if you want to buy anything that's hardware oriented, the just-in-time model that has sort of prevailed in the world economy over the past decade has failed us. And so so that all suggests that the economy is going to continue to grow, perhaps even at a faster pace. Having said that, it's sort of a K-shaped recovery. I think that's how it's playing out right now. In San Diego, we've had a huge amount of growth in the place in the employment sectors that pay a lot. Professional services, life science, biotechnology, software technology, information sciences, and so forth. And it's been a big deal because it has broadened sort of the array of players in our local economy and has strengthened our economy as a result. And that's on top of the fact that we have still a strong, very strong military defense-based economy here, which accounts for probably 1/3 of the employment in our region. And that keeps a stability there. But what the phenomenon has occurred, and as Oscar took you on a tour of the rest of California, essentially what companies in Silicon Valley, many companies have decided is, hey, we're going to expand down in San Diego. Best example of that is Apple, which announced that they're going to add 5,000 jobs down here. And they're going to cherry pick employees out of Qualcomm, which is our largest private sector employee. So this is going to be a really robust environment that's we're going to see some musical chairs of employment in the region. We're going to see the attraction of new employees down here. And it's all because despite the increase in housing prices, and they are at historically high rates, I'm not going to go through those numbers again. Our housing prices are less than half of what they are in the Bay Area. Silicon Valley, San Francisco, pick your poison. We are cheaper now than Orange County, LA, the Bay Area, and Seattle. And so that's an attractor in itself, because as I said earlier, as I said earlier, these people are paid well. They can afford the kind of housing. In fact, I was humored by Oscar's numbers, because you really can't have a conversation in most communities in San Diego about housing without, starting at the $1 million mark. When we're talking 500,000-700,000, that does apply to Imperial Beach. It doesn't apply to National City. But even Chula Vista, you're approaching that number in terms of suburban single-family housing. So housing is expensive, and I agree with you. I don't see a significant drop in it. In the defense of that is that we are behind the 8 ball in terms of supplying housing in this region at a very significant level. In fact, I've been doing, I know I don't look at Oscar, but I've been doing this for over 40 years, and ever since I was minus 2 years old, and I've never seen the delta between supply and demand the gap as significant as it is today. And that, of course, has bid up housing prices, has had a significant impact. What you didn't mention is the driver of it is millennials, is people that are now in their 30s and 40s who are forming families and making good incomes and coming to San Diego. And they're causing the demand for housing, which we're not building. We simply are not building single family homes much anymore, except in Chula Vista and a couple of other pocket places around the region. So that's really the most significant issue. Housing price is an issue. The location of housing relative to employment is an issue. A lot of housing in South Bay, a lot of employment in North County. The type of housing is an issue. 90% of the housing that's going to be built in the coming decades, SCEDC tells us, is going to be in the multifamily variety, which means condos and apartments, which are going to be very difficult for families to accommodate themselves in. So that's sort of the nuance in the housing market that we really got to get our arms around. That's really the big problem in our region right now. It is not just the deficiency in housing, which is tens of thousands of units deficient. And I've got dramatic slides that I can put up, but take my word for it. But the fact that we're never going to, that deficiency is always going to be there. And it's always going to create this supply-demand imbalance, and it's always going to bid up the price of housing. As long as inflation stays pretty much intact. And I pretty much agree, I think, also with your conclusion there, Oscar, that some of these inflation rates are temporal, and they will be tamped down as the year progresses. But I think some of it also is a little sticky, and we are going to see some increase in mortgage rates. But as long as those mortgage rates don't go sky high or real vertical, I think the situation as it is going to stay. I don't think we're going to see much of a dip in value, in values of housing in the coming months. Where the action is right now in the region is not just in those technology areas, but I just took a tour. I was lucky to get a tour of the new Amazon facility on Otay Mesa, and Amazon is building the biggest building in their portfolio in San Diego in Otay Mesa right now. It's almost 3.5 million square feet, and it'll be opened in October. And it's pretty cool. All the robotics in there are pretty cool. And the building never ends. It just keeps going and going, and it's 5 stories tall. And what's really interesting about it is that it's only the first building in their plant down there. They're building several others, the total of which will be approaching 6 million square feet of space. So Amazon's making a big investment in South County, not because it's not because of the location. It's just the availability of the land was down there. It's not because of its proximity to Mexico, although I think they're going to benefit it in terms of attracting employees. But this will generally benefit South County because there will be new employment down there. Because even though there's a lot of robotics in that building, there'll be thousands of new jobs that are created as a result, and fairly highly paid jobs, because Amazon pays pretty well, which is a reason that unionization hasn't gotten a foothold yet there, because they do pay well, fairly well for the kind of work that it is. And so there's that action going on down there. There's the new Chula Vista Bayfront project. There's a lot of housing relative to what we see the rest of the region that is being built in South County. So there's a lot of action down there. I think what I also want to add is that a lot of the trends that we're seeing in real estate and in the economy were trends that were happening anyway. They were evolving. There has been an evolution of trends. For instance, in how we shop. a lot of my business, which my business, Oscar, if you're not aware, is doing market and feasibility studies, mainly for real estate developers and investors. And a lot of my work is in sort of old vestigial shopping centers that have no purpose anymore. And we're repurposing them into mostly residentially dominated mixed use projects. Why? Because our retail footprint has been too big. And why our retail footprint has been too big is somewhere connected with the fact that we are doing online retailing. And that's a trend that's been going on a long time and really took off during COVID. And so that was an evolution that turned into a revolution in terms of the change in the kinds of shopping that people do. In the office space sector, we're going to see really high vacancies for a fairly long period, mostly in the office sector, certainly double digit, probably well north of 20%, because no matter how you slice it, there's a compression of demand in office space, because what was an evolution in terms of how we work turned into a revolution during the COVID period, because people had to work from home. And so companies said, well, we're just going to throw it against the wall, see what sticks. What stuck for a lot of people, including me, because you're looking at my home office right here, is the fact that they can work from home. So are people going to only work from home? Or are we going to see a complete move back to the office? The answer is no on both extremes. We're going to see somewhere in the middle, where we're going to see companies be more flexible in terms of their approach to how they allow their employees to work. But no matter how you slice and dice it, we are going to see a compression of demand in the office sector. So what does that leave? That leaves hotels. Hotel sector has rebounded in a very significant way, but only on the strength of the visitor market. As Oscar alluded, we haven't really gone back to work yet. I'm sorry. Businesses have not been allowed their employees to travel much yet. Conventions have not reconvened yet. We're just starting to see that happen this month at the San Diego Convention Center. And that will play out in South County as well, in Chula Vista at the convention center that will be built there, because business demand will come back, but it hasn't come back yet. Despite that, we've seen robust new activity in the hotel sector. So the hotel sector, which was most impacted by COVID, is the one that's sort of roaring back right now, and still absent that one key segment, the business market, or I should say two key segments, the business market and the convention meeting market. And so that's going to be an interesting trend. My developer clients, my residential developer clients, have reacted to all of this. Obviously, when they see more people working at home, they're looking at, and I have this conversation almost daily with my clients, they're looking at building unit mixes that are purposely constructed to include home office environments, so that people can work at home and they're not working at the kitchen table. So that's an example of the kind of sort of sticky change that we're seeing right now. And I think that as the months play out, and as the more delivery comes into the marketplace, I think we're going to see the opportunity for a lot of innovation in the residential sector. So I think that's really where I'm going to end, is on the word innovation. There's going to be a lot of innovation across the board, because over this past year, we've seen changes in consumerism amongst all the real estate food groups. And we now know, we have a better sense of what will work, what won't work, what consumers are demanding, and where the opportunities are. I will say this: San Diego is rapidly urbanizing, rapidly verticalizing, and we're seeing a real sort of not gradual, but almost a radical change in how our region looks and feels economically, in terms of the built environment, a lot more vertical, in terms of the kind of people that live here demographically, in terms of our culture. It's really an exciting region to live in right now. It's way more exciting to be here than it was 40 years ago when I started. So with that, I'll stop, Jim. And since there's no audience, there's no questions unless you have some.
No, I want to thank you both. This was incredible. And I may have to borrow your tagline. It was an evolution that turned into a revolution. I love it. Because that's truly what's happening in
credit, because nobody else does.
I will. I'll give you credit. But no, that was an amazing snapshot into, why things are happening. And I think a lot of us have seen bits and pieces, but haven't put that all together in one quick, concise conversation. So any comments from you, Oscar, to wrap up here as well?
I think, Gary said it very well. And it's very true that, when Gary mentioned earlier about, home prices, I mean, I'm puzzled by the fact that, San Diego should be, more developed, more tech companies should be going to San Diego, given the fact that, just to throw out, some, quote unquote fun facts, in San Diego, the median price is what, about 800,000-ish or so. But just to give you some idea, in San Mateo, the median price is 2 million. So, yes, if someone wants to just move to, move remotely work, which is very capable of doing so now with the technology, someone who work in the industry, with work in the Bay Area, can simply just buy a home as chump change, in San Diego, half the price, and still be working or still be getting paid by a tech company in the Bay Area for a much higher amount. So,
well, thank you both. Gary, anything to close, or just thank you both?
No, this is a subject that we could chat about for hours, and I often do, but I've got a hard stop.
Yep. Well, thank you both, and I look forward to actually having some of those longer conversations with you guys.
Thank you too, Jim. Good
Thank you for joining us today.
thank you, Jim.
Take care.
Bye.
Okay, bye-bye.